indeed processing in India. The forecast third wave question is, will it happen? It seems likely it will, according to the scientists who know these things. When will it happen is a big question, and that's a question that has an impact on demand in India during the very busy peak season during the end of September, October, and early November, and how that will affect the confidence of processors to buy RCN and the activity of consumers in consuming cashew nuts. So we get to the middle of the year, still plenty of questions to be answered. The market does appear to be settling down a little bit. I don't think we're looking at a major shortage. The challenge is that the raw cashew nuts would be in the right place at the right time, and that the kernels market somehow maintains this growth in demand by making sure that prices stay within reasonable levels that we can work and develop over the long term. So let us go then to our guests. From India. And let me see if we can connect with Mr. Tukaram Prabhu.
Good morning, Jim.
Good morning. How are you?
All good, Jim. How about you?
Yeah, very good indeed, thanks. And we're also joined by Mr. Amit Pai of the Karnataka Cashew Manufacturers Association.
Hi, Jim.
Hi, good afternoon to you.
Hi.
So, gentlemen, we're very, very interested in the situation in India. India is the largest consumer of cashew nuts in the world, the second largest producer in 2021. We see the second wave of the pandemic receding. How is the cashew sector coping with the pandemic this year?
Unlike last year we had a sudden lockdown, which was completely unplanned for all of us. And we had absolutely no clue on what was to happen. But this year we were pretty much prepared for what is to come. So we had a lockdown for almost 1.5 months. But in spite of that, we were able to manage things better. And now that vaccines are pretty much available in India, we as a cashew industry, we have on our own provided vaccines to our labor. So that's an initiative that we as an industry have taken. So we are not waiting for the government to do it for us. We are proactively involving ourselves and getting it done.
That is a really positive development.
Yes, and in that sense, things are much better. But in some parts of the country, in some states, there is still COVID cases coming up. So in those sectors, the processing has reduced. So overall, if we consider Indian processing, I think there is a drop of about 25% in the processing capability.
And what about demand? I mean, is demand returning to normal? How do you see that evolving in the coming months?
Demand is, I'll take that. Jim, demand is coming back to normal. What happens is we Indians normally have a very short memory span. You know, all the pains of the lockdown and the COVID-induced issues, we've put it behind our back and demand is forging ahead. We estimate a very good offtake in the coming festive season, both for wholes as well as brokens. So brokens, what is happening is all the weddings and the festivities that got pushed off in the past 1.5 to 2 years are now being held at a frantic pace in India before any third wave comes up. So that has pulled up, created a good demand for brokens. Whereas for wholes, we are seeing a very conscious shift in the consumption pattern of kernels. What was earlier treated as a luxury item is now being treated as a health food and is being used as a replacement of all these junk table snacks otherwise used. So this is also very evident in the fact by the faster sales of smaller SKUs that are coming up. So we are seeing a fairly good demand to be slightly exceeding the supply capabilities of the industry this year.
That would mean that, India, for anyone who's not aware of the position India plays in the world, India is the largest consumer of cashew nuts, uses wholes and brokens in every possible application that you can imagine. What really interests me in what you've just been saying is a switch from a luxury fruit to a healthy snack. That could accelerate long-term growth in demand.
Definitely, and the process has already begun. Wherein you see that very evidently in the sales that are coming and the way the sales are happening. It is showing that shift in the consumer demand there.
That's interesting. But in terms of, I've been wondering for some time, regard to the production in India, we haven't really seen an expansion in production, at least a fast expansion in production for some years. How do you see that? Both in terms of this year, just the short-term impact of the pandemic, but also the longer-term trends in production in India.
No, you are right, Jim. See, when you consider India as a whole, the production is more or less stagnant. But what is actually happening is the traditional areas which were growing cashews, in those places, the production is reducing and there are new centers which are coming up. Overall, the production numbers are the same, but it's a good prospect for the future, wherein we see new states and even in the existing states, new areas coming up with cashew cultivation in a very big way.
Right. And that, of course, takes time.
Yes.
So
and this year in particular, COVID did impact the harvesting season. But as I mentioned earlier, in that also, the impact was much lesser than the previous year.
Right. So perhaps we could be optimistic on long-term production trends in India. Certainly, if consumption continues to rise as it has done over the last 10 years, more production is needed.
Yes, of course. And from other, in some areas, we are seeing some farmers shifting from sugarcane and other commodities into cashews.
That's interesting.
So we are in fact seeing more of scientific cultivation than the traditional one.
That is interesting and much needed. If I look at the growth in demand around the world, we've seen strong growth in demand, and we've seen an increasing dependence on a single country, i.e. Vietnam, for supply. And the question that comes to me is that India's, and I think we can understand it from a commercial point of view, that processors would focus on the domestic market. It's got a lot of advantages in terms of price, payment terms, delivery, and so on. Do you think it's likely that we will see India start to return to export markets as the production increases?
See, for most of us in India, Jim, it's been a family business which has been running over generations. Yes. So the shift from the traditional manual processing to a mechanized processing was taking time. Actually, it was a learning process for all of us. And in this process, there was a bit of ups and downs because of the quality deterioration and all these things. And now we can confidently say that, okay, we have come over all these things and on the verge of scaling up our processing. So I think in the days to come, India will be returning into the export markets as well. in a big way.
I think there's a
Just
lot
a
of
matter of
buyers that
time.
would welcome that. I mean, with the high dependence on a single origin, there's always a risk. I mean, Vietnam has done a remarkable job in supplying cashew kernels to the world, but dependence on one origin is very high, and I think a lot of buyers would welcome that. I was concerned also that to see last year India lose ground in markets that I would expect where India had a preference, the Middle East market, Japan was another market.
Japan, yes.
I presume India will focus on those markets first as exports start to grow again.
No, see, as you already mentioned, a slight hindrance in this aspect is the booming domestic market of India. So which is attracting the processors first. So I think very soon when the prices start compensating or stabilizing, I think India will be back into all the export markets.
Just for people who may not be aware, that the domestic prices in India are well above the world market price. And this is one of the reasons why processors tend to focus on their domestic market, and that's perfectly natural. Congratulations on the vaccine scheme for workers in factories. I think it makes business sense, but it's also a very good example of processors treating people who work for them very well.
But no, thank you, Jim. And see, we are pretty lucky that at least we are able to arrange for the vaccines.
Yes, indeed. But turning to imported or CN, India is obviously a big buyer of raw cashew nuts from West Africa, from East Africa. What are the issues? We're talking, let's say, from the supplier's perspective. What are the issues for processors that you would like to see addressed, maybe of quality, logistics? What are the issues? What are the things that African suppliers could do better in terms of the supply of RCN?
On this point, Jim, we would firstly like to congratulate Ivory Coast. In spite of having the biggest crop in the world, they have maintained the quality. So that's a big advantage. Like the drying aspect, particularly in Ivory Coast, the way they take care, that's been a big blessing for the processors. And in comparison to even this year, we had moisture complaints on Ghana, initial shipments from Ghana. So I think that moisture aspect and the drying at the farmer level will definitely help the entire value chain, and in turn it will help the farmers to fetch a better price for their product. The kernel consumption is basically for raw kernels or plain kernels. It is not for the roasted cashews. So what concerns us more is the appearance, the color, the taste, and all these things. So if we are able to identify the area of the raw cashew which is coming to us, we will be able to pay better for the areas which will give us a better value in our domestic market. So traceability will be a big factor.
Right. And presumably you'll reflect that in the prices that you pay.
Yes, it will definitely over a period of time.
Okay, and
in fact, this year we have been seeing, there has been a preference for Benin origin seeds, but this year particularly, the difference between Ivory Coast and Benin when it came to seed prices was not much. And the reason for that has been the good work that has been done in Ivory Coast.
So we're really talking about good post-harvest handling, good drying, to bring you a nut that you can turn into a plain cashew kernel, good color, good flavor.
Yes.
And over the longer term, how would you see the relationships, or how could we improve the relationship between the Indian and African cashew sectors?
No, see, basically India and Africa, I think the relation should be it should be a partnership. It is not competitiveness there. So in this sense, I think there should be a global agency. Maybe ACA can take the initiative of uh, marketing of cashew kernels in the sense that we educate the consumer on the health advantages of cashew, and also maybe improve the image of the cashew industry. Unlike the earlier days wherein it was manually processed, today the health conditions of the workers and all the other aspects are well taken care of in a mechanized unit. So collectively we will have to educate the consumers, and also maybe in India we are using broken cashew as an ingredient. So if this thing we are able to replicate world over, I think that will be a big boost for the cashew sector.
Yes, I completely agree. And I think we've seen the power of promotion in the nuts business if we look at the Californian almonds and how consumption has grown over the last, well, 20 years, really.
Yes. No, so all involved in the value chain have to work together in this direction.
But that's a very interesting perspective and perhaps something that ACA could become involved in. Gents, thank you very much for your contributions. I'd ask you to stay with us. I'm going to hand back to Ernest, who will ask us some of the questions from our participants. Ernest.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jim. Thanks also to Tukram and Amit. And it's a pleasure also knowing what efforts are being made right in India to make sure that the workforce are healthy and are able to resume working. Because as you said, for us, Africa and India, Vietnam, it is more partnership. We look to what is happening there also, just also to be sure that things work normally and effectively there, so that then we can have trade also going on here as we also grow a domestic processing market. So it's more a partnership, and I also embrace what you say about promoting the image of processing in Africa, promoting or educating also consumers, because today India has a bigger domestic market, and probably it's also learnings that we have to take from there in how to incorporate cashew in the food of the people in Africa, and then to create a viable domestic market. There are questions for you though, but then first I will want to stay with Tukram and Amit. It is more to delve deep for the question I have here about how the factories are also, is there any modernization of factories taking place, especially as you mentioned that demand is likely to exceed supply, because we are also looking at what is the volumes that are of RCN that are being demanded by India. And this will also be dependent on the types of factories that are there and the level of modernization that is taking place to be able to not only serve the domestic market, but also international market, as you mentioned earlier on.
Yeah, Ernest, see, we in India, we represent the Karnataka Cashew Manufacturers Association. So in our area, actually, there has been a lot of modernization which has happened. So just to give you an example, a unit which was processing about 3 tons a day manually, today does about 25 tons. So this is the kind of expansion that has been happening all over.
Let me move a bit further on also. There is a question as to whether factories in India are in the position to partner factories in Africa to do some kind of further processing. So if there's some kind of partial processing taking place in Africa, as is also being promoted in Cote d'Ivoire, is this possible to have factories that are ready in India? And is it also on your agenda to promote linkages between factories in India and those in Africa?
No, see, presently we are looking at expansion of processing capabilities within India. And we already see factories coming up in Cote d'Ivoire, and we are now basically concentrating on our domestic markets, whereas the factories in Africa will be catering to the other than India, the world over supplies. So I think once we are stabilized on what we are trying to achieve, I think this option will be open. That is also a possibility, but not immediately, at least.
All right, okay. Tukram, there's a question also for you. You have talked about the fact that overall production in India has remained relatively the same. There are production areas that are phasing out, but new production areas are coming back. You also went on to talk about buying from Cote d'Ivoire to, as always, meet up with the demand for raw nuts within India. And here the questioner wants to know which parts of Cote d'Ivoire specifically you have a preference to buy from. I think it is too much of a deeper question because I don't know whether, but if you can answer that, that would be appreciated. And then also what traceability systems are being used to ensure that you know where exactly you're buying from here.
Presently, the thing is that we have been able to source raw nuts from a particular area in Tanzania.
Okay.
But that has not been possible for us in Ivory Coast.
Okay. Can you explain better?
In the sense that I can tell you, okay, 5 different areas in Tanzania, which is preferred for particular reason. But when it comes to Ivory Coast, all the different areas like your Katiola or Boake or Dabakala, all of it gets mixed and is exported to us. So we are not really able to identify which area is better for us.
Yeah. So the question of
we will have to do some trials on it.
Okay.
And then we can take it forward.
Okay. So still the question of traceability is key for Africa to watch and to put up systems that allow you to even trace all the way to whichever point you're buying from.
Yes.
Very good. Now there is a question here. I think, Jim, you may want to address that one, even though also as you're buying, you could also tell by how much the increase in freight costs have also affected your operations. But Jim, the question is more, what are the underlying factors contributing for the high freight costs and also the magnitude of the increase? Of course, you talked about the fact that it's about $25 to $30 per pound, but then they want to know over the years what is the magnitude of the increase and what the underlying factors are. And then, like I said, Tukram can also pick a bit of it in terms of how much it has impacted on processing costs within India.
Well, I mean, let's put the underlying conditions on the freight market into the context. This is an issue for the entire world, for a globalized system. This is not just a cashew market issue. What we've seen, if you look at a chart on the last global markets encounter, you'll see a chart that shows freight rates worldwide skyrocketing in the last 18 months or so. The factors are slower movement of containers, disruption at ports, reduced capacity at ports. It is remarkable. They're estimating on any given day there are 300 container vessels lying outside ports waiting for a berth at the moment. This has had a knock-on effect as economies have opened up again, particularly in the United States. There's a shortage of, not of trucks, but of truck drivers to bring the containers. There is a lack of capacity on rail services. And there are now even situations where shipping lines are forcing importers to discharge the containers at the port and reload onto another vehicle. All of this is adding cost, of course. The problem, this is not the kind of problem that goes away quickly. This is a problem that will probably last. According to senior management in Maersk Line, they think there will be an impact of this until the end of 2022. I think that they're right. It won't be as severe as it is now. If we talk about the escalation in freight costs is almost, beyond belief. You're looking at freight rates at 20 times in some cases. Now, it will depend on the nature of the shipping, the nature of the relationship, any additional or existing contracting. But you're looking at rates at times 20 times higher than they would have been 2 years ago. And don't forget that shippers of ingredients like cashews are competing with exporters of high value items from Asia, items like televisions, computers, where the freight component is less significant than it is in a product like cashew nuts. So this is a severe impact. It's a long-term impact, and it's having knock-on effect in many different ways, both at the origins, which is mainly the problem is a problem in Asia, but also at destinations where shipping lines want the containers back as quickly as possible so they can get them back to Asia. And some people say that there is a certain amount of opportunism on the part of the shipping lines. I'm not so sure about that. I think this is a market that is fraught and a market that is not going to normalize anytime soon.
Yeah, Tukram, so how has recent issues also impacted on processing cost in India? Yeah. Now the second leg of the question here.
You mean the freight aspect?
The freight aspect, and probably generally also COVID and the other related improvements to address the issues. Yes.
No, see, when it comes to the freight aspect, I think the shipments have been really slow from Ivory Coast. So we as processors have not been able to plan our production line. It's been a little difficult on that part. And when it comes to processing cost, because of the COVID, what we say, the protocols, actually on every aspect from the travel of the employees to the processing center and back home, all in every aspect, the costing has gone up. So since the units are more mechanized now, the implications are not that bad. But yes, the costs are really high now.
Yeah. The next question, I hope Amit is still around. But Tukram and Amit, I'm being asked to find out from you your views on policies that are being implemented in Africa by various governments. Which policies that you think are impacting adversely the Indian processor, and then what you think should be desired policies to be introduced in Africa? I mean, it's always a tricky question, but it is good to hear from on the other side your views on these policies.
Thank you for the question, and thanks for reminding us of this aspect as well. See, the port infrastructure, I don't know why Ivory Coast, the shipments have been so slow when the containers have been stuffed. So this is one aspect, I think, where the government policy can help us. Because, see, as traders, people have signed contracts, and in a volatile market, when the shipments do not happen in time, that really hurts the relationship. So that is one aspect. And other one important thing that we would like to know is in certain countries, particularly in West Africa, there is a restriction on visiting the cashew growing areas. So if any policy decision can be taken on this, so that our people are able to educate the cashew growers on the post-harvest handling of the product. That will help the entire sector in general.
Also, to add to this, if countries can come forward and create testing parameters like Ivory Coast does for moisture and quality, that will be a really big booster, because we have seen the quality of Ivory Coast nuts go really up in the past 3 or 4 years, and we'd request maybe the other countries to follow suit.
Thanks, Amit and Tukram. It is interesting, this whole issue of having the possibility to go closer to the farm gate and to also buy from farmers and educate them. I think, yes, bringing them education on harvest, post-harvest is a big value added, but there's always the worry about, more like... Also,
Ernest,
yes.
Ernest, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, go ahead.
My request was specifically to visit the cashew growing area. It has nothing to do in buying directly from the farmers.
Okay.
That is not what I intended.
So the whole idea for you, just to clarify it, so that or any policymaker, it is more to also allow you to be able to get access to growing areas and to educate on your buyer requirements also. Is that the case?
Yes.
Very good.
Yes.
I think that is also something that is very useful, because you talk about the Ivorian situation. There, I believe they also don't allow too much of that access, but it is a state that is providing all this knowledge. But I think there's also the possibility to do more of collaborations with governments to make sure that governments are aware of your requirements, buying requirements, and the rest, and so that it can go into the education that takes place in the growing areas. But I think it's a good point to note here. So I think, gentlemen, without any further questions from any of the platforms we are joined on, it would be nice to get your final words on how you see the season going in the next few months. This is, we don't talk about the next half year, maybe the next 3 months, probably, and then what your expectations are actually.
So far, this season has been really good for all of us. And as we can see, what worries us more is the last box in the slide, which Jim has kept open for us, the third wave in India. So this uncertainty is really scary. So we just pray to God and we hope that He keeps all of us safe and healthy.
Very good. We also pray that everything goes on well in India. We have a lot of friends and partners there. We want to see you all safe. And Amit, your final words also?
Yeah, adding to this, we are going at a good pace in the country now. All the marketing and the processing activities are really catching steam. So we are again wishing that the third wave doesn't become as big a roadblock as the second wave. We just want to sail through the third wave and carry on with the work that all of us are doing.
Thank you very much, Tukram and Amit. And now I go back to Jim Fitzpatrick for his concluding remarks.
Let me first of all thank Mr. Tukram Prabhu of MMP Cashew, one of the world famous cashew companies, and Mr. Amit Pai of the Karnataka Cashew Manufacturers Association for their participation and their thoughtful comments. It's really interesting to hear from people who've thought about what they're doing and have plenty of experience in the cashew business. So thank you both for that. In general, I think that I'm kind of looking forward to the second half of the year in terms of the market. I think that we see a fairly robust sector so far in the face of very difficult circumstances. It's good to hear that India is doing better. It's good to hear that the cashew sector in India is modernizing. It's good to hear that production in India in the longer term will start to increase again. There are a lot of lessons for African exporters, I think, in some of the comments that were made. Quality of raw cashew nuts, post-harvest handling of raw cashew nuts matters. It makes a difference. Processors appreciate it, and that should be reflected in prices as time goes on. At the moment, I'm looking at a market that has a number of questions over it. Some of them COVID related, others related to a certain amount of opportunistic trading in difficult circumstances. I hope that the situation in Vietnam stays under control, and we should mention that Vietnam has had a very good record in managing the pandemic so far. I hope, as we all do, that India continues on a positive train and that India doesn't suffer from the third wave in the way it did from the last wave. I think that's the key to that is vaccination. I think we're at an interesting turning point in the cashew business. Having come through a pandemic, and I think the sector will come through the pandemic quite well, having come through that, the increases in demand, the increases in consumer interest, and in, as we've heard from India, diversification of uses and applications. If that happens elsewhere, we're looking to a very bright future for the cashew sector. So I would say to members of ACA, processors in Africa, hold tight, keep believing. This opportunity is coming your way. And thanks very much to our contributors and to everyone who's contributed in the first half of the year to the GME. It's very much appreciated. Thank you very much, Ernest.
And thank you very much, John. It has also been 11 sessions this year, and it is so highly appreciated. And thanks to all our interveners, particularly Tukram and Amit, who have been with us today. And to all our precious participants, we say a big thank you. We will see you all again in September when we go back to our annual conference from the 15th to 17th of September, and then followed the next week with the special topics each day, and then a resumption of the Global Markets Encounter on 29th of September. So at this point, I hand it over to Blessing, and thanks to you all. And Blessing, please take over. I know there are some more information to share with us here. Hello, Blessing.
Yes, Ernest, thank you very much for the update. So like Ernest mentioned, GME comes to a pause today and will resume on the 29th of September. Nevertheless, next week, Wednesday, the 21st of July, we come your way with another session of the ACA Cashew Technical Series with Shakti Pal. So next week, Wednesday, 9 a.m., we're on your screen with Cashew Technical Series with Shakti Pal, and we are going to be looking at the roadmap to achieving food safety certification. As Ernest mentioned, from the 15th to the 17th of September, we'll be having the 15th ACA Annual Cashew Conference, which will be held fully online. Registration has already started, but right now we just have the physical registration at the ACA office. In the coming days, we would launch the online registration. We invite you to join us as we hold the 15th ACA Annual Cashew Conference. Thank you once again, Jim, to the guests and to everyone who has joined us from the very first session of the Global Market Encounter 2021. We see you again on the 29th of September, but next week we have Cashew Technical Series. Thank you and stay safe. Bye-bye. can view your chat in so.
Hi, I'm Salma. I'm the CEO of Ivoirienne de Noix de Cajou. Today, cashews are faceless, and our aim is to give cashews an identity. More than 40% of raw nuts in the world are produced in Ivory Coast, and we believe the cashew identity should be African. So we set up this factory to connect the value chain between the farmers and the consumers. The farmers are fragmented and the consumers are disconnected, and we are here as the processor to connect the two and tell you the story. And this is the story about creating jobs for women and youth in a country that has grown cashews historically but not processed.
Je m'appelle Amani Luku Charlotte.
De cajou. And we are here as the processor to connect the two and tell you the story. And this is the story about creating jobs for women and youth in a country that has grown cashews historically but not processed.
Je m'appelle Amani Luku Charlotte. Mon village c'est Djedou en Ouzé. J'ai 7 enfants. C'est Champ d'Anakat là je prends pour faire école de mes enfants.
Blame blue akisi Veronique. Wakamasikai. Okranya bamu serikemi. Nyami.
Hello, my name is Luis Tito. I am plant manager of EN Cashew. We are focused to make the best quality with the best product, especially for you. We are nuts about cashew.
My name is Ashta Sherif, a quality director at EN Cashew, a BRC certified company in Ivory Coast. My team and I are working every day to ensure a safe product for you and healthy environment for all of our employees.
J'ai mon tombé. Madame là, pas les payer. Moi, benae. Wakriye bena souple. Bena kasamango. Moi,